When you go silent, the first reaction in his mind is not confidence, it is confusion. Silence interrupts the rhythm he had grown comfortable with, even if he never admitted it. Your messages, your presence, your availability had become a background certainty. The moment that certainty disappears, his brain flags it as something important. He starts wondering if something shifted that he failed to notice in real time. Men often realize value not through presence, but through the sudden absence of it. Silence creates a psychological pause that demands attention whether he wants it or not. He may look calm on the outside, but internally the pattern has been broken. The mind dislikes unanswered questions more than uncomfortable answers. Your silence becomes the question he cannot immediately solve. In those early days, he replays interactions with microscopic detail he never used before. A comment he dismissed suddenly feels heavier when placed under silence. He checks tone, timing, and energy, searching for the exact moment things changed. This is not panic yet, but it is heightened awareness. Silence forces reflection because there is no distraction to dilute thought. Even if he distracts himself with work or friends, the gap quietly follows him. The absence removes emotional reassurance he didn't know he was relying on. He begins to realize how often your presence anchored his emotional comfort. What felt optional before now feels noticeable in its absence. Awareness is the first step before emotional investment deepens. What makes this stage powerful is that you did nothing loud to create it. There was no argument, no dramatic exit, no explanation to debate against. Silence leaves space, and space invites the mind to fill it with meaning. He starts assigning weight to your absence because the brain assumes importance. The quieter the signal, the more the mind leans in to decode it. Silence subtly communicates that you are not chasing reassurance or validation. That restraint registers as strength long before it registers as strategy. He feels the imbalance before he understands why it exists. This is the moment curiosity replaces certainty in his emotional state. The absence begins shaping his perception before any words return. During this phase, his ego quietly wrestles with the lack of access to you, not because he feels rejected yet, but because control feels slightly reduced. Silence removes the feedback loop that tells him where he stands. Without that confirmation, his mind fills the gap with possibility. Possibility includes the idea that you may be pulling away on your terms. That thought alone changes how he measures your importance. People value what they cannot immediately retrieve or predict. Your silence disrupts predictability and elevates attention. He may not name it, but something feels different now, and that difference begins quietly reshaping how he sees you. As the silence stretches, his attention turns inward rather than outward. What began as curiosity slowly becomes self-examination he did not plan for. He starts asking himself questions he normally avoids or rushes past. Did he take things too lightly or assume your presence was guaranteed? Was there a moment he should have shown more effort or awareness? Silence removes the distraction of interaction and replaces it with reflection. Without your responses to guide him, he is left alone with his own behavior. This is where emotional investment begins to grow beneath the surface. Because when someone reflects, they attach meaning to what they might lose, and meaning deepens feelings long before action appears. He begins measuring himself against the version of him he showed you. Not the polished version he presents to the world, but the relaxed one. the one who assumed understanding without always earning it. Your silence quietly highlights the gaps he once ignored. He wonders whether he met the standard he thought was enough. This is uncomfortable territory because it challenges his self-image. Men often avoid emotional accounting unless something forces it. Silence forces it without accusation or pressure. It simply removes the safety net of reassurance, and in that space, self-questioning becomes unavoidable. At this stage, he may test the silence in subtle ways: a casual message, a social media check, or a delayed reaction, not to reconnect fully, but to see if access still exists. Silence that holds steady sends a stronger message than confrontation. It tells him that attention is not automatic anymore. This triggers deeper reflection rather than surface-level curiosity. He begins to realize that effort might be required to regain connection. The idea of effort reframes how he values what he had. People respect what they must show up for consciously. Silence quietly shifts the rules of engagement. As days pass, his thoughts begin looping back to you more often, not because of need, but because unresolved space demands closure. The brain seeks completion, and silence denies it. He imagines conversations that didn't happen and outcomes that might. This mental rehearsal is a sign of growing emotional attachment. Attachment is strengthened not by availability, but by mental presence. You occupy space in his thoughts without occupying his time. That imbalance creates emotional weight he didn't expect. He starts associating you with depth rather than convenience, and depth is where genuine connection takes root. As the silence continues, an emotional imbalance begins to take shape. He notices that his thoughts are reaching for you more than before. What once felt casual now carries a subtle sense of urgency, not panic, but a quiet discomfort he can't easily dismiss. This discomfort comes from caring more than he expected himself to. Silence exposes the gap between how invested he thought he was and how invested he actually feels when presence is removed. The absence turns emotion into something tangible and measurable. He starts feeling the weight of missing rather than the ease of having, and that shift changes how desire forms in his mind. He begins to associate you with emotional safety he didn't label before. Your presence had a way of calming, grounding, or elevating him. Now that it's gone, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Desire grows from contrast more than consistency. The silence highlights what you added to his emotional landscape. It's no longer about attraction alone, but about emotional resonance. He misses how he felt around you, not just the interaction itself. That realization deepens longing beyond surface-level interest. Because emotions tied to identity are harder to replace, and silence gives those emotions room to speak loudly. At this point, fear enters quietly, not dramatically. Not the fear of losing you completely, but of losing access. Access to your attention, your warmth, your validation. Fear doesn't shout, it whispers through repeated thoughts. What if she's moving on without me noticing? What if I misjudged how secure this connection really was? Silence leaves no reassurance to counter these questions, so the mind replays them until they carry emotional weight. This is how concern transforms into desire, because desire often grows from the risk of absence. The imbalance deepens as he realizes he has less control than before. Control doesn't mean dominance, but emotional predictability. He can't anticipate your responses or your availability now. That unpredictability heightens emotional focus. The mind pays more attention to what it cannot predict. He starts wanting to reach out, not out of ego, but out of a genuine need to restore emotional balance. Silence turns you into the missing piece in his internal narrative, and missing pieces demand resolution, which is why desire sharpens when silence remains intact. Over time, silence stops feeling like a pause and starts feeling like a statement. Not a spoken one, but a deeply felt one that reshapes perception. He begins to understand that your absence is not accidental or emotional chaos. It feels deliberate, grounded, and controlled rather than reactive. That realization changes how he categorizes you in his mind. You are no longer just someone who responds, but someone who chooses. Choice signals self-respect, and self-respect elevates value instantly. Silence suggests you are not waiting to be picked or reassured. You are moving in alignment with your own emotional standards. And that alone forces a reevaluation of who you are to him. He starts comparing you to past experiences without meaning to. People who stayed available no matter what, no matter how little effort was shown. Your silence breaks that familiar pattern and stands out sharply. It tells him you are not afraid of space or distance, that confidence communicates emotional independence without explanation. Independence makes connection feel earned rather than assumed. He realizes that access to you was never guaranteed, only offered. And once something feels earned, its value increases. This is when respect begins to layer over attraction. Because respect grows where boundaries exist without hostility, silence also reframes how he views your time and energy. He begins to sense that your life continues regardless of his presence, that you are not paused, waiting for his attention to resume. This awareness shifts the power dynamic in a subtle but profound way. Power here is not control, but self-containment. You are complete with or without engagement from him. That completeness makes your presence feel like a privilege. Not because you demand it, but because you don't chase it. The absence communicates standards more clearly than words ever could. And standards are what transform interest into intention. Eventually, his thoughts shift from curiosity to meaning. He wonders what reconnecting would require, not whether it will happen easily. Silence teaches him that effort may be the price of closeness. And effort filters out half-hearted intention automatically. He begins to imagine how he would show up differently. More present, more attentive, more aware of what's at stake, because silence has redefined what access to you represents. You are no longer familiar background noise in his life. You have become a choice that carries weight and consequence. And that understanding changes how he approaches you entirely.